Yeah, I mean, for us, young people coming into the business, and for most employers, young people are the lifeblood of the organisation. And why do we want young people? Because they're innovative, they bring new ideas, and they challenge the business to think differently about the way it's operating. And the other thing is, they represent our customers. We can't carry on having the business made up of 30, 40, 50-year-olds when our customers are getting ever younger. So we have to reflect our customer base. And it's all well and good employers taking on young people, but for those young people to come to us, we also need to take responsibility for making sure they come to us with the right tools as well. It's not okay for us to stand on the sidelines and snipe at the education system. We have to get involved with the education system, so when young people are coming to us, we've been a part of the curriculum that they're delivering, that they've undertaken. We've helped with the delivery of the curriculum, so when they come to us, we know they've got the skills that we need.
Okay, thank you. Next question from, is it Chidi Okoru? Over here.
Hi, Chidi Okoru, World Skills London. My question is around science and technology. And it's really asking, what do the panel feel that an organisation such as World Skills London 2011 can do to assist in the evident shortage of skilled scientists, technologists, engineers?
Obviously, that's an obvious question to Andy, but he's already given a couple of answers, so I'm gonna give him a break for it, and I'm actually going to go across to Alison, because at the end of the day, we have to teach that as well.
I think it's about demonstrating the benefits to the science and technology industry of the vocational training that takes place. All we have to do is look at some good examples where businesses have saved a lot of money by working with young people and training up young people. We've got a company in York that saved 50% of downtime because we multi-skilled their technicians. And by multi-skilling technicians, they cut the amount of time their equipment wasn't working. Well, if we can get those messages out using the UK Skills and the events next year, which are going to be so high profile, and the impact on the bottom line, that will make a terrific difference to businesses understanding why they should upskill their workforce.
Now Andy's had a time for a breather, I'm going to ask him a quick question. Have you found it difficult to actually find the right people in your sector?
It is really difficult, and the thing I would say to World Skills is that there's a proliferation at the moment of good IT users coming out of the education system, and generally people are good IT users. We need IT producers. We need people who are very good technical people. Unfortunately, we look overseas to find a lot of those people at the moment. But through the education system, through universities, through vocational learning, we need to start moving from just being IT users to being technical IT people as well.
And Nick, how does that fit in with City and Guilds?
I think it's an issue we're finding across the board, but I think it's in terms of when we look at the growth rates of different qualifications and different markets which are growing within our business, IT is definitely one of the ones we think is going to be huge in the next 12 months. And in terms of how we're looking at it and then the sort of partners and channels that we work with, it certainly reflects what Andy's saying.
Thank you. Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Rebecca Larkin has got a question for us. Where's Rebecca? She's gone home. Rebecca, you're from MLS apparently. No, we've bored you. You're frightened. You're not going to talk to us. I'm going to count to three. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, you've gone. No more Rebecca. Russell Pocock from City and Guilds. You must know who you are. There we go.
This one, I think, quite close to your heart, Andy. How can we provide the places in employment that young apprentices are looking for? Recently I heard that something like 20,000 apprentices applied for approximately 200 places at BT. So how can we provide the places that young apprentices are looking for?
And it's yours again.
Yeah,
it's all your fault.
The figure's right. 236 places and in excess of 26,000 applications. So it's a real challenge for us. I think what I'd suggest, and what I would certainly suggest from BT's point of view, is we need to change our view of how we are as an apprentice recruiter. At the moment, we look and we say, what does the business need in 3 years' time? and how can we reflect that in today's apprenticeship recruitment? I actually think what we need to say is, what does the sector need? We should be an important apprenticeship recruiter. We should take on more than we need within BT, and we should train those people to the standards that BT has, and then make them available to small companies within our supply chain who can't necessarily take on apprentices and the like. So I think we could certainly take a role in that, but it would require a systemic change, because as the rules stand at the moment, it's very difficult for us to do that.
Nick, you got anything to add to that?
I get to ask my colleague's question. It's interesting. I was with Transport for London yesterday, and to your point, Andy, the same thing actually. Using the supply chain, so they're saying that every £1 million that they're bringing in terms of they're using with suppliers, that supplier has to take on an apprentice. We were working with them to say, well, why don't you make it 2 apprentices for every £1 million that is getting put out to that supplier? I think the other thing also is what can the government do around tax incentives and things like that as well, I think. So it doesn't necessarily have to be more money that's going in to the pot for these apprenticeships, but how can we have other ways of doing it that incentivise UK employers to actually take more apprentices on?
I mean, there's a question that you ask yourself is, how difficult is it for governments? Because the last government squandered X billion pounds messing around with VAT for a year, when really the biggest challenge to us all is employment and youth employment. So I don't know, I think it might have been 12 billion quid got actually wasted, in my view. And that challenge about youth employment is still with us today. That money's gone. And just think how many apprentices that could have actually funded. I mean, maybe I'll throw it back to the floor. I mean, if anyone's got any views about how more money can be funneled through to employers to actually encourage them to start taking on school leavers, I mean, widen it really, and apprentices in different ways. Anybody got a comment on that? Lady at the back. I recognise that lady.
Anne Seaman here from
Who are you?
Retail. Anne Seaman. We are working on it already, but we need to just get more of the same money to the front line. So by simplifying the system, finding more efficient ways of funding those apprenticeships, and simplifying the system so that 80% of the money gets to the front line rather than 60%. There is some work going on at the moment, but that's one way of not needing more money, but making the money we've got more effective.
Anybody else?
Could I just make a comment? The interesting thing is that it's only about 8% of the employers in this country that take on apprentices. And the other interesting fact is that the majority of those are small and medium-sized enterprises. So while BT and the other big companies actually do a really, really good job, because they're a relatively small number of those very big companies, it's the SMEs that do most of the apprentices in this country. Apprentices are a fantastic product. You know, they're efficient, they're not expensive, they generate loyal, work-ready employees. All the studies prove that. There is an issue around communicating that, and world skills is part of how we do that, and that's an important part, because government needs to put funding in to sort of prime the pump. But in theory, once you've persuaded an employer to take on an apprentice, they should demonstrate their value, and then we should move on and try and target that money to companies that don't use apprentices once we've sort of persuaded them. But it's really a relatively small percentage of companies that do it, which is remarkable. I mean, not great.
Well, I've got to tell you, my first job I had, and it wasn't there's a public perception that I was a T-boy. It's incorrect. I was assistant to the T-boy. I think I was on a 1,200 quid a year, and the organisation that took me on got 800 quid for taking me on. That was from government. And I can tell you now, that's the only reason I got that job, because there was an encouragement to take the risk, take youngsters on that hadn't worked before to actually do a job. Is that not something that you think would have an immediate effect?
Well, first let me comment that we've written off that investment.
And rightly so, sir.
You're right. I mean, there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? You do need some money to sort of motivate people to take that
Encourage.
risk. Yeah, well, it's about taking risk, isn't it? Because they're going to take someone like you that otherwise they might not, and they're going to say, well, what's this apprentice sort of thing, and let's try it. On the other hand, as I said a minute ago, I mean, this is a proven product. It really works. So, you know, my view is we definitely can and we do bribe employers to take this risk. That's fine. It's just a case of we need to do it intelligently, focus on the sectors that don't do it, and try and open them up and persuade them, and then take that money and move on to the next sector.
Well, thank you, Jeff. That's the first time they'll be doing that intelligently then. There was the floor. There was a lady, somebody put their hand up. Gentleman just there's got the microphone.
Yes, John Outry from London First. We're a business representative organisation in London. Just one other possible comment on expanding apprenticeships and traineeships more generally, because it's quite interesting. We surveyed recently employers in London, 2,000 of them, and we asked the question, how many of them take on apprenticeships, and it was about 2%. We also asked how many take on young people as trainees, and it was about 30%. And so my appeal would be to find more flexible ways of funding for the kinds of employers who, perhaps for very deep-seated cultural reasons, find apprenticeships difficult. And I think in London, I'm thinking of the financial services industry, where, if you know, to be honest, if you use the word apprentice in many employers in that sector, it's a turn-off. The very word is a turn-off, but they will happily take on trainees under some other brand. So my appeal would be yes, more money might be welcome. I think that probably at this time of the year, with the comprehensive spending review coming up, that's maybe unlikely. But what about opening up the flexibility of how the money's made available, so that we get, you know, a much broader definition of what an apprentice is, and we accommodate the kind of businesses who will take on trainees, but maybe not quite according to the current rules.
Jeff, it's your show.
Yeah, there's a balance to be struck there, isn't there? Because an apprentice is a brand and it's a product. And, you know, there was comment earlier, which I agree with, around, I think it was Alison that said we need, you know, a smaller number of well-recognized, high-quality vocational brands, and apprenticeship is kind of one of them in a sense. So you don't want to devalue the brand by spreading it too thinly. But I do take your point that and what we try to do is go around to employers and say, well, you take these people anyway. We can morph these people into apprentices, and you know, that's where we try and use the money intelligently. You're right, there isn't going to be as much, so we've got to be much more careful where we place our bets, and you know, that is one of the ways we try and do it. Clearly, we haven't been as successful as we need to be. The National Apprenticeship Service has only been around for a year and a bit, but it's made good progress. It needs to make more.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to give you a break now. So we're going to go back to the forum, the Students' Forum.
Yeah, a couple of points from the forum. The first thing they've sent a note to me is they would like to make sure that I've pointed out that they're appearing on the screen on the right, so you can recognise them, so that you realise they're real and you get some impression about those young people.
What a good-looking lot! Look at this.
Secondly, I should be giving a reference to who's asking the questions. The earlier questions I was asking I didn't have names for, but now the screen's just died on me. It's come back. That's good. But I have Sam from the UK, who's representing the UK out in the forum, who's asked a question here. Do you think that the education system is failing young, skilled workers by not providing vocational education from an earlier age? Why do you need to complete school for 18 years before starting your dream education? He goes on to say, a little later down the trail, I was dyslexic and they didn't catch on to it before I started vocational education.
I'm going to give that to Alison.
I think it would be good if vocational education started earlier. We do have some really good examples.
By earlier, what would you say?
Well, I'd say 14 is a good time. We don't want to, we need to give a good grounding, but young apprenticeships is fantastic. Students really benefit from that. 14 to 16 work where you can mix and match school and college placements is fantastic and really works. And I think the more flexible, personalised learning that you can give at say 14 to allow progression into vocational education would be really, really valued, and I think would enable us to break down some of the barriers, would help us get more lads into hairdressing, it would help us get more girls into construction, because if we can start earlier, before the preconceptions are set, and perhaps do some group work with single gender groups, then that might help us in breaking down those barriers. So I do agree we need to start earlier, and we need to make those pathways more flexible.
Where's Molly Britton? Hello, Molly. I'm going to bring you in here because I've actually got your question as next, and I think it fits in with what Alison just said.
Oh, okay. Hello. Oh, I'm mic'd up.
You're all mic'd up. We can all see you. We can hear you. This is your moment.
Yeah. Do you think that women should be encouraged to enter the construction industry? And if so, what form do you think that encouragement should take?
I mean, there you are. I'm going to give that back to Alison because she's principal of York College and she's a girl, but it's an academic position she's holding.
I notice I'm the only girl on this.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm actually going to give you this one because it all fits in.
I think we need to start earlier. I think we need to start doing our very best to break down those preconceptions about construction being dirty. I mean, some of it is, but we have girls on brickwork. Actually, they're fabulous, and they don't mind getting dirty. And we need to start making it much more friendly for the female students on construction much earlier. And instead of doing design and technology in school, let's do construction, let's do brickwork, let's do joinery. I tell you what, I wish I'd done plumbing. My boiler's broken down. So I think we start earlier, we widen the vocational offer to the kids at 14, we teach them some basic skills in those vocational areas, and sometimes we in my day I did domestic science, I still can't cook, and the lads did woodwork. Let's do a bit of reversing of that. Let's have some carousels. Let's try and break down those barriers so that it's not seen as a gender issue. It still is, I'm afraid, and we need to start very early.
Aidan, did you do cooking?
No, actually not to any standard that's edible, I have to say, but I was going to reflect a little bit about the World Skills Competition, because one of the great things when you get 1,000 youngsters competing from more than 50 countries is actually you do get stopped in your tracks when you see a female welding or doing something that you don't expect, and that's a really good challenge for us. It really challenges our preconceptions, and you also realise that not all countries think about vocational skills and particular trades and particular ways of work in the same way that we do. So that's a really good thing to see, and definitely I would have every expectation next year that you will walk around at times and stop in your tracks, because it's not what you would consider the norm, and I think that's a good and healthy thing for us.
I had to tell you what, those of you who's from London, who works in London regularly, have you seen how many girl bus drivers there is now? I mean, that is totally changed. I don't know what the statistics. Anybody from London Transport here? Transport for London, anyone? No? I don't know what the statistics is, but I can't help noticing now the number of female bus drivers. So it can happen. It does change. In my day, if you saw a girl driving a bus, she'd cross the road. The joke. But Molly, absolutely right. I was actually reminiscing about something I was doing on Monday. I was in Leeds Armoury talking to a bunch of 1,400 kids about the pracademic degree that we run at Huddersfield University. And pracademic means practical and academic mixed together. It's a business entrepreneurial degree. And if for the first year you get to know about business, second year you decide what business you're going to run, and the third year you finish your degree actually running your own business, and we give you all the help we can, and at the end of it, of course, you've got a job and a BA. And what was amazing was this is the third year cohorts that we were really talking to. There was 1,400 kids. We've had two lots come in. Year one, we had one girl out of 15. This year's cohorts, we had two girls. And I looked around me on Monday, and it was pretty well evenly split at the 1,400 kids, boys and girls. And one of the things I did do was actually be a little bit controversial with the ladies, just to get them to roll up and talk to me, because next year I don't actually want to see 2 girls out of the 15 or 3 girls out of the 15. And do you think, and I'm going to throw this back to the audience, do you think that it's actually girls deciding that they're still conditioned, that it's not for them? Oh, that was quick.
Francis Hughes from World Skills. I think that is true. I mean, I think if you look at sort of gender divides, women are still less risk takers than men. That's true. You know, as an entrepreneur, and I think that needs to go back to schools and back to education. That Alison was saying. I think girls need to be encouraged to take risk more these days. There are lots more female entrepreneurs out there, of course, but there aren't enough. You know, so that's what I think we need to encourage girls to be more risk takers.
So it's an early educational issue basically that we've got to get to. Thank you. How's our youth forum doing?
I think the youth forum's doing fine. I can introduce another question which I took earlier, so I don't have a name to it, so I'm sorry about that to the youth forum before I get another message from them. Although it does say that when I introduced the photograph, it came up here saying, got a very loud cheer. So they're happy in that side. How important are competitions and awards in raising overall standards in skills?
Whoa. I'm going to give that back to you for the moment.
Well, yes, it does come back to me, doesn't it? I thought that. I think that the important thing that particularly competitions, which is the area that I'm particularly involved with, do is they inspire people, and I think that's really important. I'll reflect a little bit on a personal level here. I was at the World Skills Competition in Calgary last year, where the UK did extremely well. The UK won 3 gold medals and 6 bronzes in Calgary in 2009. And I'm a parent of 3 youngsters. I've got a boy and 2 girls. And I have to say, I ask myself the question, if my son came to me and said, I wanted to do bricklaying, if he'd asked me that question before I'd see the World Skills Competition, what would be my sort of natural reaction as a parent? And you can imagine the sort of thing as what society says to you and so on. Having seen the way the young people perform in those skill areas in Calgary, having seen, using the particular example of the bricklayer in Canada, and the particular character and the skill and the absolute dedication, it shifts your whole mindset. And for me, what I want to do and what I want to use the event next year to do is to expose as many people. And I think we had a question earlier where we did talk about parents and how can we shift their perceptions. And I'm linking back to that as well, because I think it's not just about young people making choices. It's about parents and the way they steer their young people. And I think, for me,